I'm joined by National Campaign Director for Main Street Alliance, Mr. Shawn Place. All right.
Got it.
I just wanted to make sure we at least got that right. And thank you, Calvin, for always looking out for me.
Yeah.
Good morning to you, sir, first off.
Morning to you. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Tell me a little bit about what the National Campaign Director of Main Street Alliance comprises.
Yeah. So I would say first off, I live here in the great state of Wisconsin. I'm in Madison. And Main Street Alliance, we have about 30,000 small business owners all across the country. Many are sole proprietors, folks who have less than 10 staff, people who are, working class, working to make a living and chasing their dream. And we're working to make sure that elected officials are listening to them, to make sure that they have good health care, that they have childcare, that they can take paid leave, they can get access to capital. So it's really working to help support our members to be able to make elected officials do their job.
This is off the beaten path, but we're just seeing what happens when somebody doesn't force elected officials to do their jobs, with Elon Musk putting pressure on Congress people to not follow through and make sure that the government stays open. There's always got to be somebody watching, unfortunately, elected officials to make sure they do the right thing. So congratulations on that. I'm with you.
Cool.
But secondly, you wanted to talk about, BadgerCare and the importance of that. You and I had a conversation before we came on the air, and I said, the cost of insurance, health insurance, which was an automatic thing when I was a young boy and a young man. My father worked in industry. Everybody offered health care when I was a young boy and a young man. There wasn't very few jobs, if any, that didn't offer health care. It was part of the package that you got. Insurance, that was commonplace. And so as a young boy, I never had to worry about insurance. My father worked in the industry. He always had insurance for us. So all the way through my 18th birthday, I was insured. And then I went into industry, and from 18 to 54, I was covered with insurance. My entire life, never had to worry about insurance until 52 years of age, and the company moved out of the country. And then for a little while, I didn't have insurance, but then there was a deal brokered between my union and BadgerCare. And then I had coverage again. Some of the best coverage I ever had in my life was BadgerCare. So let's talk about how these businesses that want to do the right thing certainly cannot afford to insure their employees individually. Maybe you're talking about some kind of package deal worked out through these various small businesses in BadgerCare.
Yeah. So I would say first off, if you're a big business, you can get group coverage, although it is often very expensive. If you are a smaller operator, if you have a mix of younger people or folks who don't need insurance because they get it through a spouse, it can be very tough to offer group coverage. So that ends up meaning that a lot of those folks do one of two things. They either are eligible for programs like BadgerCare, although the income limit's too low right now. We're working to change that by finally taking the expansion. Speaker Voss has refused to take it for 10 years, and love to talk about why I think that's deeply misguided. And right now, the Affordable Care Act certainly has helped tremendously. It's made sure people can stay on their family's plan until they're 26, protect people with pre-existing conditions, but it is still very expensive for a lot of folks. And if you're lower income and you are making $22,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year, you can't afford a $5,000 deductible. And so that's why we believe that by doing the expansion of BadgerCare, it'll help to address that. And we're going to work really hard to get that done here in the next legislative session.
Well, there's been this constant, as you stated, pushback from Republicans to doing just that. So you think possibly because of the fact that they were able to do something to address where Republicans had gerrymandered districts, that they were able to have Republicans control everything, that now we're finally at a point where there's enough balance to be able to make this, pass?
I think so. So the Democrats picked up 14 seats, 4 in the Senate, 10 in the Assembly in November. We actually had a political action committee that helped to elect 5 of those candidates, and we worked very hard to make that happen because we need to have a more representative legislature. And the thing about it is that even though the Democrats are still in the minority, several of the Republicans that were elected won by the skin of their teeth. Benjamin Franklin, who is a real person, not a founding father. He represents a district up in Green Bay. There's Dean Coffert. There are Jesse Rodriguez. There's Todd Novak. There are several. The example of Dean Coffert, he represents Neenah. He only won by 300 votes. Do you think he's going to be looking over his shoulder, hearing from people in his district about what they want to see him do? And that was not the case before with the gerrymandered maps. People would automatically win their races and they didn't have to listen to the voters. And so that gives me hope. It's still, Voss is still the speaker, but he, a lot of these members are going to need to listen to their voters, and we're going to work to make sure to hold them accountable to support BadgerCare expansion because it's what's right for folks in their districts.
So, people may not know. I mean, so if they're eligible for BadgerCare, do you know what the eligibility issue is with BadgerCare?
Yeah. So right now, if you are up to 100% of the federal poverty line, which is very low for an individual, it's like $12,000 a year. If you're a family, it gets into the 20s. What Walker did when he originally was running for president and didn't want to say he was taking Obamacare, and to be very clear, the reason why we haven't taken BadgerCare is mostly a political decision, not a policy decision. He said, let's allow everyone 100% under 100% poverty to be on Medicaid, and then people 100 to 138% of poverty, they can go in the marketplace. The problem with that is that the out-of-pocket costs are too high. And so people, on the one hand, they can get insurance, but they can't really use it all that well. Whereas BadgerCare, as you said, I personally know we have members of MSA who have been on BadgerCare because when they're starting their business, they're not making a whole lot. And so that helped them get through that period. And it is very low out-of-pocket costs. It's high-quality coverage. The people opposed to taking the money will say, oh, the reimbursement rates for the hospitals and the doctors isn't high enough. And so but if we take the cost savings by taking the expansion, which it would save us almost $2 billion over the next 2 years, we can just take that money and just use it to raise reimbursement rates to take care of that issue. And so ultimately, if people can afford private coverage, that's great. But there is this gap right now that exists that needs to be addressed.
If you're just joining us, I'm joined by Mr. Shawn Phetteplace. He is the National Campaign Director for Main Street Alliance. We're talking about BadgerCare in the state of Wisconsin. So let me ask you, is BadgerCare Medicaid?
Yes, but we like to call things Wisconsin names here.
Okay.
And in fact, if you go to other states, they all have kind of clever names for it as well. But yes, it's the same thing.
Well, just for the sake, so people understand, what we're talking about. So there are different plans across the states, and this particular plan, is it better in Wisconsin? Is it the same as most? Offers the same in other states that's being offered in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so it's BadgerCare and something called BadgerCare Plus, and that was
what's
actually
the difference between BadgerCare Plus and BadgerCare?
It's you just have to pay a little bit more of a premium, and it is you have some more bells and whistles with it, and that was actually done under Governor Tommy Thompson, and that's the important thing to know is a lot of the reforms that were done at the federal level as a part of the Affordable Care Act were actually modeled off of things that Governor Tommy Thompson did in Wisconsin. So this really should not be a partisan issue. And ultimately, states will vary. The way it works is that the federal government sends money to the states, and the states have to pick up part of the cost. It's a shared cost between the state and the feds. The shared cost of expanding BadgerCare, though, is the feds pick up a much higher percentage. And so right now, what we've done is we're paying more money for worse coverage, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
So are you at all concerned about the fact that there's a new administration coming in, and clearly with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Doge watching all of these different things, that they'll look at something like this and think that this is something that certainly we can't afford?
Yeah, I mean, they've talked about cutting Medicaid, period, not just BadgerCare expansion, but given their inability to pull together votes last night and today, I feel confident that we'll work and protect this program in the weeks and months to come.
All right, 855-752-4842. I'm joined by Shawn Phetteplace. He's with the Main Street Alliance. He's the National Campaign Director. You can join us at 855-752-4842. You have any questions about BadgerCare and others, you're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show. All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. I'm joined by Mr. Shawn Phetteplace. He's with Main Street Alliance, and we're talking about BadgerCare expansion. You have any questions or comments? Certainly, you can join us. So Shawn, when we talk about where we are headed in all of this, and it's been such a grind to get this passed, and people who struggle, and there are more and more of us struggling than there had been in the past. Healthcare costs soaring. How is it that BadgerCare is able to kind of keep things, in perspective as it relates to costs?
Because it doesn't have to make a profit. The insurance companies make hundreds of billions of dollars per year. And, honestly, I think that's a big reason why folks have been okay with the status quo in Wisconsin, is because, the insurance companies are still making, their profits off of it. And that's happening because folks are being pushed into the marketplace. And those are private plans. And so I think that's a big part of it is, Wisconsin has a history of having really well-run public programs, whether it's BadgerCare, which is really a model for the nation, or our public pension system, which is one of the best run in the world, really. And so, there's things that government does well, and healthcare is one of them. The reason why Medicare exists is because, it would not be cost effective to cover older, sicker adults, right? And so that's why government has a role. And this is why government has a role with this, because there is a gap between people who are making too much to qualify for traditional Medicaid, but don't make enough to be able to afford good coverage otherwise.
Shawn, I'm one of those guys, or one of those people, 70 years old. And if I had to go into the marketplace, I've got some pre-existing conditions. If I had to go into the marketplace, there's no way I'd be able to have any coverage. And so, in the face of all those things, I just had a guy on. I have a guy on every Thursday morning. He's a pharmacist. And he was just talking about being up on Capitol Hill and realizing when they're talking about the cost of medication that the other people that were up on Capitol Hill with him dressed in suits called lobbyists. There weren't any people in hoodies like I have on or plaid shirts like you have on. And therein lies the problem. And I think the American people don't understand those things. They just think that because we're Americans, these things, and America is the greatest nation on earth, that there are going to be people who are going to be looking out for us. That's not the case, is it?
No, and that's why regular people need to make sure that their lawmakers hear from them. And so in Wisconsin, the new legislature is going to be sworn in January 6th. Unfortunate date, but that is when it's happening.
Right.
And then the governor's having a state of the state, which is like our State of the Union, late January. Budget will be released in February. And so what I would encourage folks to do, find out who your state legislator is and contact them about this. If you just Google Wisconsin State Legislature, the website's pretty good. You can find them. You can find their phone number and email and contact them about this. And we are going to be up in the building. Our members are going to be a lobby day in March. We're going to be. We're already meeting with them before session starts on this. And things have changed. The building for a long time, I'll be honest with you, it's sort of like where hope went to die. Like when you go to some of those hearings up at the state capitol, and it was all those same people in those nice suits and no regular folks who were just trying to make a living. I think that's going to start to change now that people think and know that their voice will make more of an impact. And we're going to be up there and we're going to be loud and persistent on this. And so if folks want, go to mainstreetalliance.org if you want to join us in that fight.
Man, the wealthiest nation on earth, and yet we can't do the right thing when it comes to taking care of the American people. I've argued that as long as I've been able, even before I had an opportunity to have a platform, I've argued it's not right. And so, it's going to take more people who have insurance to get involved in this, because far too many Americans, and even if you're fortunate enough to be one who has coverage, somebody in your family doesn't. So the fight is for everybody. Is that right?
That's right. And if people have better coverage, and then that's going to bring down costs for everyone, because you can, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of addressing it later. And so, this impacts everyone, impacts the whole system. And, even if you have insurance now, you might not always, you might lose it. And so having a safety net for folks that really helps to uplift them is incredibly important. And it helps small business owners because their staff will be healthy. They themselves, when they're getting started, can get coverage, and it really helps to grow small businesses.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Phetteplace, and hopefully not hopefully, we're going to make sure that we reconnect earlier in next year and stay connected.
Sounds good. Let's get it done. Happy holidays.